Mr. Rohde, for the record, have you ever been in the witness box or testified in a court of law before in your life?
No, I haven't.
Now, in your testimony, we were at the point when the adjournment occurred. We were at the point where you and Mr. Hassan had been diverted from going directly to Spier and went to the office of Sergeant Adams or Sergeant Apollos or both of them.
That's correct.
And you mentioned that a statement had been pre-prepared for you, but it was taken back.
On Mr. Hassan's instructions, it was taken back. I hadn't signed it yet.
Was it handed to Sergeant Adams or Sergeant Apollos?
I think it was handed to them.
And then when they said you were going to be charged with murder, Mr. Hassan took it back.
That is correct.
Right. And you had not at that point signed it?
I hadn't signed it, no.
And what happened then?
From there, I was told that I had to attend to go to a hospital to be examined, and Mr. Hassan drove me to the hospital.
Right. And I understand that you were driven through to Cape Town to Wynberg to Victoria Hospital.
I'm not sure of the name of the hospital, but
But in any event, we do know it's common cause that you were examined by Dr. Stevenson.
that is correct.
And she conducted an examination of you. We have that on record. It's part of one of the exhibits. It's the contents of the examination have been admitted. And just for the record, as I understand it, I think it's part of exhibit UU. Or if it isn't part yet, it's been agreed that we will hand it up as part of exhibit UU. And that included the examination form that Dr. Timmerman filled in, plus photographs were taken. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, just for the record, it's not in dispute. What injuries did you have at that point?
I had the neck on my finger, on what I
Cut on your finger?
my cut on the finger, which I previously described, and under a big magnifying glass, there were two magnifying. I beg your pardon. There were two scratches, I think they were, in my back somewhere.
You get described as two superficial, very short scratch marks.
That's
Other
correct.
than that, did she examine you fully?
From head to toe.
Right. Nothing?
Nothing at all.
Okay. She also, in her report, stated that this cut on your finger was fresh. It showed no signs yet of healing or granulation tissue. In other words, very recent.
I wasn't aware of that.
From there, what did you do?
From there, I got dropped back at the airport, and I flew.
Pardon me, I must interrupt you. Were specimens taken from you for DNA purposes?
I cannot recall I cannot recall if they took DNA samples from me.
I know it actually is common cause that DNA was taken from your mouth or your nose and also from under your fingernail, but you can't recall.
I can't recall if it.
Okay. Carry on. You went back to the airport then?
I flew back to the airport.
You drove back to the airport?
I drove back to the airport. My brother-in-law, Paul, dropped me back at the airport at Cape Town International, and I flew directly back to Lanseria that evening or that late afternoon.
And what was that date? Was that the 27th?
No, that was on Thursday the 28th.
28th. Right. what happened next?
I was in such shock. It felt like I was in a dwell. It felt like I was in a dream world. And I remember when I got back to the airport, I remember turning my phone on, and as I turned my phone on, I got a call from a number that I didn't recognize, and it was a reporter from, I stand to be corrected, from De Burger, who wanted to know if I would like to make a comment on the fact that I've been charged as a murder suspect.
Yes.
And I just put the phone down on him, and I'd left my car at Lanseria Airport, and I remember driving back just in absolute shock. I just couldn't believe what was happening.
Take us through the next few days, please.
At the airport, I called Mr. Daniel Witz's father, who happens to be an advocate, a Mr. Manny Witz. He had obviously already been informed by Mr. Hassan as to the fact that they'd charged me with murder on this, and I said to him, I need another autopsy. I want another autopsy done on Susan, because I knew I had nothing to hide. So I said, this has to be done straight away.
Does that mean just when they told you you were being charged with murder, did they tell you how you had supposedly murdered your late wife?
No, they just referred to the fact that there was no doubt based on their autopsy report which they had received.
Okay. So, what steps were taken to arrange a second autopsy?
Mr. Witz, Advocate Witz, contacted a pathologist by the name of Mrs. Klepp, I believe it was.
She's either Dr. or Professor Patricia Klepp.
Dr. Klepp. And Susan's funeral was on so this was on the 28th. Susan's funeral was on the Tuesday, and her wish in her will was to be cremated. So obviously there was an urgency to have this autopsy performed, and he arranged with Dr. Klepp to perform the second autopsy.
Now I'm going to just skip ahead. We know that Dr. Klepp spoke to Dr. Khan, and after that she withdrew from the matter.
That was what I was told by Mr. Witz. That's correct.
And what happened next?
Then Advocate Witz arranged at very short notice. He told me that one of the country's leading pathologists would be in a position to assist in this regard, and he was referring to Dr. Perumal, and I didn't organize it. Mr. Witz organized for Dr. Perumal to come up to Johannesburg and to perform the autopsy on Susan.
And when was that done, the second autopsy?
Either on the Saturday or the Sunday.
Right.
I'm not sure of the exact dates.
Carry on.
So Susan's funeral was on the Tuesday, and by this stage everybody knew that, and had been reported that I had been charged as a murder suspect in Susan's death. And I remember attending Susan's funeral as a murder suspect. It was the most horrific experience you can ever imagine, when everybody's looking at you thinking that you're a murderer.
Yes. You feel a bit ostracized there.
I was completely ostracized, but
there was some complaint by Mr. Thompson at one stage that you hadn't phoned to thank him. Can you comment on that?
After Susan passed away, I completely shut down. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I can't explain it. My whole being shut down. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to shower. I was just like a zombie. I was just a shell. I was broken.
How did you manage your daughters? How did you manage your daughters in that time?
Well, I was so ashamed because ultimately I blame myself for Susan's death. So I was ashamed, but I realized that I had to take responsibility for my actions and for my children, and I sat them down and I was honest with them. I told them exactly what I had done, and I told them that their mom had died not because she didn't love them, but because of my actions.
And by your actions, what did you mean?
I meant my infidelity, my adultery drove Susan to this point.
Did you have any arrangement, or was any arrangement made on your behalf with the police in terms of which they could contact you either directly or through your legal representative?
Advocate, I wasn't party to these meetings, but I saw the correspondence. But Advocate Mahalik had met with, I believe, both Sergeant Apollos and Sergeant Adams, saying any assistance that anything they want, they must just ask. And I had nothing to hide. I mean,
It would be forthcoming.
Correct.
And how did Mr. Mahalik become involved in the matter? Just briefly.
Because it was based in Cape Town, Mr. Witz, Advocate Witz, had suggested to me that Advocate Mahalik should be involved because he's based in Cape Town.
Instead of him?
In conjunction with him, but he would obviously attend to most the items because he's Cape Town based.
So was the idea that your advocates would be Mr. Manny Witz and Pete Mahara and Mr. Advocate Pete Mahara?
That was the initial idea. That's correct.
Right. But it didn't evolve like that, did it?
No, it didn't. From a cost perspective, I had to make a decision, and obviously I went with a Cape Town-based advocate.
Okay. Now, during this period, following upon your late wife's funeral, well, let me go back a bit in time. Insofar as the autopsy is concerned, that was performed by Dr. Reggie Perumal. Are you all right?
I'm fine, thank you.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
I'm sure the court will grant an adjournment.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Insofar as Dr. Perumal performed the second autopsy, and you'd obviously authorized that he could do that, albeit your first choice was, or the first choice recommended to you was Dr. Ted. Was there any conversation or further instruction or any development in regard to the autopsy?
I had no, prior to the autopsy, I never met Dr. Perumal. I'd seen him on carte blanche, funny enough. I didn't know that was my extent. And the only, I got a call from Mr. Danielwitz, my attorney, to say that Dr. Perumal had a discussion with Dr. Khan, and Dr. Khan had indicated to him that a bone, a hyoid bone, was fractured, but Dr. Perumal couldn't identify this fracture, and for him to be 100% sure about this, he would have to authorize CT scans, and to do that it would cost more money. So Mr. Daniel Witz phoned me to say, does he have authority to go ahead and spend that money and do those detailed x-rays on that particular bone.
And what was your response?
My response was that Dr. Perumal is free to do any test, whatever it takes. I knew I had nothing to hide, so whether he did, it didn't matter to me, because I knew I hadn't done it.
Tell me something. When was this phone call? Can you recall?
I don't recall the date of the phone call, no.
Okay. Now, after the funeral, what happened then? We know that at a certain stage you were arrested. Did the police at any stage come to your house? Did they conduct any investigations that you were aware of?
No, nothing at all. They never came to my house. They never contacted me up until I believe I was arrested on the 23rd of August. Up until that date, I had no interaction with the police service.
Right. And where were you in that time?
Up until my arrest, I was at my house in Johannesburg.
And were you still working with Sotheby's?
Yes, I was.
Was your work at Sotheby's ever terminated at any stage?
As a result of my arrest, it was. That's correct.
Okay. Now, you've heard the evidence of Sergeant Adams and the evidence of Sergeant Apollos. And if it is to be believed, and this will be argued later, we heard that there was a confidential phone call to Sergeant Apollos to the effect that you were about to skip the country, that you purchased a flight ticket and you were busy moving money out of the country. Do you know anything about it?
I know absolutely nothing. The first time I heard about it was when Sergeant Apollos testified.
He also testified that he couldn't remember who the informant was, and he in fact even couldn't say whether it was a male or female who spoke to him. Do you recall that?
I do recall that, yes.
But did you at any stage in that period shift any money anywhere or make any preparations whatsoever to leave the country or to move to any place?
Absolutely not. No.
And he said that was the basis for his arresting you. Tell us about the arrest, please.
Myself and my middle daughter were in bed together. She wasn't sleeping, so she used to come and sleep with me in my bed. And I lived in a complex where we had a gate, and at about 6 o'clock, just before 6 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rang. So he was outside the gate, and from my bedroom, when you walk out of my bedroom, you can look down onto the gate area, and I saw Sergeant Apollos there with a couple of other people. They were in their white van, double cab van, and there was a uniformed officer with them, and I was just in my shorts and my t-shirt, and I went downstairs and I opened the gate for them, and I went outside, and he showed me his badge. My mother was staying with me at the time. My mother and father were staying with me at the time, and he showed me his badge and he said, "You're under arrest for murder." And I remember my mother saying to him, "Where's your arrest warrant?" And he wouldn't answer her. And she said, "Where's your arrest warrant?" And he wouldn't answer her. So I said to him, "Please let me go upstairs and get dressed." So he said, "That's fine." So I went upstairs quickly. I just put on some jeans and khakis and grabbed a jacket. And I went downstairs, and they didn't handcuff me. I was put in the back of their van, of their double cab van.
When you say the back?
The back seat. The back seat. So not in the trunk, in the back seat. And as I was driving out, I said to Sergeant Apollos, I said to him, "Why did you have to arrest me? You could have phoned me. I would have come to the police station." And his exact words to me were, and I know he's denied this, but he's not telling the truth, "I must tell Mahalak he doesn't make arrests on fucking appointment." Those were his exact words to me.
And where were you taken?
My house from the Randburg police station is about 1 kilometer away, so it's about a 2-3 minute drive in their motor car. And we arrived at Randburg police station, and all the press were waiting there. So from the time they arrested me to the time I arrived at Randburg police station was probably 10 minutes at best, I think. And all the press were waiting there, and all the photographers, and I remember them pushing their cameras by the window. And then from there I was taken to the local cells. There were 2 cells at Randburg, one underground and one above ground, and I was taken to the cell above ground, and I was put in there. And I remember Mr. Daniel Witz arrived, my attorney, and I remember him saying to me, "Did they show you an arrest warrant?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, let me try and get hold of them." And I know that he tried to get hold of them for a while. I can't tell you what happened from there. And then from those holding cells, I was taken downstairs to the Randburg holding cells, because I believed, I was told by Mr. Witz that the prosecutor in Randburg didn't want to hold me without a warrant. And I was taken downstairs, and I was put in a cell there for a while. And then I was taken out of that cell. Then they handcuffed me, and And then from there I was taken upstairs, put in the back of their van, and I was taken to Linden Police Station.
Yes? What happened there?
Then I was still in handcuffs. I was taken into Linden Police Station, and I was put into a room. It wasn't a cell, it was a room. And I remember one of the officers at Linden Police Station came in and said, "Who are you? What are you doing in here?" Sorry, I forgot to mention, they didn't have keys for their handcuffs. They didn't have keys for their handcuffs. And then another police...
What is the significance of that, of them not having keys? Couldn't they
Well,
open them or
they couldn't open it. They couldn't open the handcuffs. They didn't have keys for the handcuffs. So then they put me in another room, not in a cell in Linden Police Station, like adjacent to the cell. And then I remember this officer from Linden coming in, and he was saying to me, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I've been arrested." He said, "Well, but what are you doing here? You're not signed in, you know. I mean, what are you doing?" So I said, "Well, I don't know. I've been brought here." By this stage, Sergeant Apollos and Sergeant Adams had left, and I waited there for about an hour and a half, and they came back, and they obviously went to get their belongings, because when they took me out of Linden Police Station, all their bags and sleeping bags and personal belongings were in the back seat of the car. So I sat in the back. I was sitting behind the passenger seat. I remember Sergeant Apollos had his seat right back. So literally my legs were right up against me like this, with all their belongings and files and whatever over here. And we then proceeded to drive to Cape Town. And I remember two things from that journey. The first was, I remember Sergeant Apollos phoning a gentleman he identified as Colonel. He referred to him as Colonel, and he said, "I'm just confirming, are the passports at the police station?" And the Colonel obviously confirmed positively and said, "Yes, they're at the police station." And
referring to which passport?
My passports, which I'd already handed in.
Where did you hand it in?
I'd handed them to my attorneys, who in turn handed them over to the South African Police Service.
In which branch of the South African Police Service?
The Stellenbosch Police Service.
So when had that been handed in at Stellenbosch?
I don't know the exact dates, but a while before I was arrested.
Okay.
But I can't tell you the exact date that my passport was handed in.
You've answered my question.
And when I handed those passports in as well, I handed in my kids' laptops, my iPads, everything to be examined. I didn't have to, but I said if they want them, they're welcome to take anything that they want to examine.
Did your late wife have a laptop computer?
She did, yes. Well, we had, when I say we had a general one in the house which she used.
Yes.
And that
handed to
yes, it was. Yeah.
And her mobile telephone?
Her mobile telephone was left in the room.
On the day of her death?
Correct.
Right, carry on.
And then, as I said, I heard Sergeant Apollos phone this colonel. I don't know who he was, but we referred to him as Colonel, and he confirmed that the passports were at Stellenbosch Police Station.
Right.
And
you said there were two things about the trip that stand out.
Oh, and the other thing that stood out in my mind was it was very late, because it was a 14-15 hour drive in the car, and I asked Sergeant Apollos if I could phone my children, and he said yes, which was very kind of him, and he gave me his cell phone, and I phoned my home phone number, and my kids weren't sleeping, and I spoke to them, and they said, "Dad, where are you?" And I said, "I'm with my attorneys, and everything's fine." And then I remember Sergeant Apollos and Sergeant Adams thought that was very funny, which I just thought was a very cruel thing to do. No, I'm fine, my lady. Thank you.
My lady, may I request that we adjourn now? I think,
Advocate, I'm happy to go on, please.
Mr. Rohde, please don't argue with me.
Sorry.
I think he's long session.
Very emotional. The interest that we adjourn. I wanted to ask you for so often that you did indicate that you'd like an opportunity before you close your evidence in chief with the murder, that you get an opportunity to assess it. I like the fact that we are finishing early today. I can hear from your questioning that you don't have much further to go. Do you?
My lady, there are certain aspects that I still must traverse. One in particular is obviously the indictment and the substantial statement of substantial facts. And then there are about, and this is really what I had in mind, about 10 or 15 little isolated one-off unrelated questions just to close off. So I don't really think I will tomorrow need any adjournment after his.
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask of you, considering that it's now almost after 2, we're going to adjourn now. If you use this time this afternoon to do an assessment so that you are, when you're done with the chief, you allow the state to proceed.
As the court cases.
Okay.